This is Black Market Borg Part 3, written by Christopher Donleona, known as Peaceful-blu, on the Short Stories subreddit. The modicum of confidence FP displayed with stitchwork only lasts to the very edge of the alley. When faced again by civilized society, he realized he may have agreed to something more substantial than attuning to questionable parts. He starts to feel the weight of such a task and begins to recede back into his normal persona, an unassuming Borg. Not really sure what to do with himself in the meantime, he wonders how he can properly acclimate to his new software. Maybe I should find an abandoned building. That's so cliche, FP says, shaking his head. However, as he walks, he suddenly notices there's no shortage of hollow shells towering over the rest of the city. For the most part, FP had been an upstanding citizen, save for the occasional shady back alley parts, which he wouldn't have done and the legit parts were reasonable. FP grits his teeth, hating the reality of his situation. He doesn't realize he subconsciously walked into a random abandoned building far from his usual neck of the woods. His emotions and anxiety prevent him from realizing every wall, every beam he attempted to touch has been partially atomized, leaving only hand-shaped holes where solid material should be. His constant mumbling, if anyone were around to hear, sounds like static interference, high-pitched buzzing. Before he realizes it, he's at the very top of the structure, only to find himself at a loss for any coherent thought. His mind is canvassed by mild static as he overlooks the partially desolate city he grew up in. It's surprisingly quiet, FP says to himself, admiring the view. 30 stories below him, there's an entirely different scene. The cacophony of alarms filling the air is enough to deafen anyone who isn't covering their ears. Yet again, FP inadvertently hacked every car within a 5-block radius. Even if FP knew, there's no guarantee he would care one way or another. The consequences of a preoccupied mind. Eventually the sun sets on the metallic city, with FP having not moved an inch since he arrived at the peak of the building. This was his form of mindful meditation. While moving, his mind seemed to move faster than his ship could comprehend. The mess from stitchwork flashes across FP's vision. I bet you wonder if you can activate anything at will. I bet you think it can't be that simple, but it is. You only have to apply yourself, kid, and just watch what you can do. FP had partially forgotten about the entire ordeal of fine-tuning his affinity for his body. He just wanted some peace and quiet. He holds his titanium hand in front of his face, the residual sunlight glistening off what little reflective surface it has. He wonders if it's truly that simple, like a point-and-click adventure. FP, not wanting to go home yet, just sits at the edge of the tower, dangling his feet off the side. I haven't been to the beach in a while. I wonder if sand still feels the same, FP says as he imagines himself at the ocean side. He closes his eyes and digs his hands into the sand, grabbing as much as he can. It's not as grainy as I remember. Kind of feels like powder. FP opens his eyes and his hand is fully clenched by his side, still feeling the powder through his fingers. I didn't know my imagination was strong enough to affect sense. FP laughs to himself. He jokingly lifts his hand to his face and blows as he opens his hand. The white powder explodes from his hand, firing out like a shotgun shell, nearly hitting the building across the street. FP's eyes go wide. He looks at his right side. Just there next to him, the concrete roof of the hand-sized divot. Little did FP know, his attuning would only be pushed by his imagination, something he never had the chance to test in his civilian life. But for now, the technology itself is beyond his understanding. I wonder if Stitchwork knows what these parts can really do and where they came from, FP says into the ether. I should probably go home. Why did it come up so high? FP starts to sink into the cement of the abandoned building, and before he can stop, he begins to melt through the very walls, by floor, until the terminal velocity of his fall and understanding of his situation becomes a 10-floor plummet. The only thought FP has on his mind at the moment is getting to the first floor, as quickly as possible, and his adolescent cybernetics are all too happy to oblige. In the precious seconds of descent, the blur of concrete looks exactly like the flat surface. To FP, it looks akin to a fast-moving elevator. To anyone else, he would be a falling ballistic missile. Bam! FP hits the floor with enough force to rumble any remaining intact glass panes. The shaking lasts for a long while as the bones of the building settle. Ugh, that was a bit scary. FP laughs as he walks away from the structure, having done absolutely zero training by his own standards. It's safe to say I'm woefully unprepared for anything. FP begins to make the slow trudge home. Several hours after FP left the fateful building, it began to rumble again. He had done irreparable damage to the structural integrity of the site. It was already on its last legs due to the demolition day. He had sped up the process in a few short moments of being there. If FP isn't careful in his endeavor, he may just raise the city after too long, like a child doesn't know their own strength, though he isn't mindful of himself just yet. He will be. But the test of true mettle, of power, is only found in the throes of adversity, and so far FP has been walking on easy street. When FP was leaving the alley, he didn't realize he was being watched. From the moment he returned to civil life, he became a target, or more specifically, his back alley parts did. At a modest evaluation of his body is worth about $40 million, but with him using it, it's worth about triple that. As for the people who know this and are following FP, they're about to find out what it means to meet someone encumbered by synchronization issues and doesn't have a full grasp of just how strong a Borg can be. On the last train back home, FP is about to learn what it means to own black market experimental tech and just how free he has become. That was Black Market Borg Part 3 by Christopher Donleona, known as Peaceful-blu on the Short Stories subreddit. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.